Black enrollment at several Ivy League universities dropped this fall. That's after steady increases over decades. Diversity at the Department of Education has become in some ways a dirty word. Columbia in 2023, 20% of their freshman class was black, 13% this year. Harvard, 18% versus 11.5. Princeton, 9% in 2023, 5% this year.
I want to hop into a CNN segment covering the plummeting black enrollment at elite universities in general, under Donald Trump as he cracks down on diversity in general. So if you can, take a moment, leave us a like on the video. It helps us out a ton. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, and let's get right to the discussion.
Black enrollment at several Ivy League universities dropped this fall. That's after steady increases over decades. Analysis by the Associated Press shows the decrease 2 years after the Supreme Court prohibited affirmative action as a factor in admissions. The decline coincides with the president scrutinizing elite colleges and their policies. Now, there is one exception of these elite schools: Smith College.
And make no mistake, this is absolutely a direct result of Donald Trump's racist attacks that he hides behind the moniker of fairness for white people who have been systemically placed ahead for decades, centuries really, but they're the ones you have to make sure are getting their fair shake. The truth is, Black people are often overlooked for scholarships that they are equally qualified for to their white counterparts who get them more often. They are less likely to be able to pay for application fees at the same rate, to have consistent transportation for the different meetings, the tours and stuff that help you get admitted. And they're just less likely to be admitted overall, even with similar grades, similar testing scores to their white counterparts. This is what affirmative action was for. Things like DEI was set out to address. And even then, again, as you can see through this statistics, most of these universities, Black people were still underrepresented to their population. So the idea they're getting handouts when you're underrepresented to your population, but white people are overrepresented and they're not getting handouts, kind of insane. What happened is bigoted white people felt threatened. And after pretending racism doesn't exist for decades, they backpedaled to say, well, it actually does exist, but it's Black people on the woke left doing it to us white people.
Columbia in 2023, 20% of their freshman class was black, 13% this year. Harvard, 18% versus 11.5. Princeton, 9% in 2023, 5% this year. Diversity at the Department of Education has become in some ways a dirty word. And there are universities or schools that are shy of using it. I've read some of the interviews you participated in, even internally within the school, and it's a word that you all don't shy away from. Do you believe that this outlier status and your attention to diversity makes you a target?
I think we're staying focused on Smith, and we're thrilled with the increased diversity of the class. You know, we were founded 150 years ago at a time where women were not allowed to attend elite colleges and universities, and so that mission of access and academic excellence has been a hallmark of Smith from the beginning.
And what you're getting, as you can see, is Black people underrepresented from their population in these elite universities. Meanwhile, white people are overrepresented as a population, but legacy admissions, of which overwhelmingly favor white students, never draws ire from conservatives. They never mention it, but DEI and affirmative action are constant talking points and punching bags from them, where again, we have to stop pretending this is anything but racism, whether consciously or subconsciously. If it wasn't, they would talk about both equally. They would talk about legacy admissions every single time that they brought up affirmative action, because they would be talking about the problem as a whole, not the ones that stoke racist vitriol within them, but they don't, so case closed. The picture gets even worse when you look into like STEM degrees, where Black people are horrendously underrepresented in STEM. And in looking at test scores, this is in no way because of lack of qualifications, it's lack of access.
Let me ask you to look a little beyond your own campus and some of these other schools where we're seeing the drop off of Black members of freshman classes after the end of affirmative action. And there are some opponents of affirmative action who say, see, this evidences that there were members of these classes, there were admissions of Black students and other students who were elevated to schools and positions that they weren't qualified for. And because affirmative action is no longer the policy, those students are not being enrolled at the same rates. What would you tell someone who believes that we're seeing this decrease at the other schools because of the end of affirmative action, and affirmative action was bringing in people not based on merit?
I think that's a false narrative, and actually, if you look at students, all students, even students who are first generation college or low income or students of color, they actually do equally well at most schools to other students.
It's honestly really simple to settle and find out where someone stands. If you think white people are overrepresented at universities because of merit, and that equally black people are underrepresented to their population because of a lack of merit, then you're racist. You're literally saying white people overachieve because they deserve it, and black people underachieve because they are less so than white people, or else they would overachieve just as white people do, right? The truth is, this serves a few purposes for the right. Anytime that a population is less educated, they'll be easier to control, less critical thinking, less able to question you, right? Also, if black people are constantly held back in higher education, they're prohibited from one of the main bridges to income barriers and climbing out of wealth gaps and gaining wealth, right? As well as you're forced to work jobs that then place you under those who are receiving a higher education, which in this situation is systemically being made so to be white people at a far higher rate, which by the way is systemic racism. And it's what we've seen for the last couple decades, of which affirmative action and DEI stood to unwind, but the majority can't be having too much equality for the minority. It's something you got to dangle out in front of them, but a little too far for them to ever actually grab it. And the problem with affirmative action is it was putting it too close and black people were actually grabbing it. So white people said, that's enough. White conservatives, I should be clear, they're the bigots.